continuing to read from Alone Book 1. As promised today or from this week, I am starting with chapter 4. But I am realizing that when I look at chapter 4, especially the first 3 pages, it really is going to sound repetitive because, I mean, chapter 4 is titled Daddy Issues. And I think I have spoken enough about my dad. At least the parts that I'm going to be reading, if I do read that, will sound repetitive because I have been speaking about my dad in reflections, my relationship with him, how he was. I think if you have been watching these videos and you've been following closely, you sort of have an appreciation of what kind of a dad he was, particularly his relationship with me. So chapter 4 then describes all that. And honestly, it will sound a little bit like I'm repeating myself because I have spoken about him. And also it will sound like I am gunning for my dad. I mean, these memoirs, Diaries of a Memoirist, are not about my dad only. There's still quite a lot to cover in this tiny little book. I have not even gotten into detail of how I started the business, the dynamics of running a business in South Africa as a young Black woman, the rise, making a lot of money, losing a lot of money. So there's a lot I'm going to still cover. However, in chapter 4, there's also the dynamic, the relationship, or rather not the relationship, the grandparents. I want to read a part about my 2 grandfathers, and just giving you the whole nkareng, how completely different they are. I mean, there are 2 polarities. And you can then get an appreciation of why my mom was the way she was, because she also appears in chapter 4 quite a lot, actually. I didn't realize. I also want to talk about my mother, because I have not read about my mother, in as much I've spoken about her, but I haven't read what I've written about her. I think you'll appreciate that. I may or may not do it on this video, but I will be reading. It might come up on the second video. It might come up on this video. Once again, we are reading, we are learning, we are, this is a dance, learn how to dance and dance at the same time type of YouTube content. So I want to read about my grandfathers though. Before we read, guys, let me just thank you so much for the subscriptions and for the viewership. That's more important. We are getting more people returning. So if you are a returning viewer and you've watched maybe 3 or 4 videos, I think it's time to hit subscribe, don't you think? Let's subscribe and help me get to at least 100 subscribers. Let's get to 100. But 1,000 like you want. Let's just get to 100. It will take 30 new subscribers for me to get to 100. After 100, then maybe we can try for 200. We are not in a hurry, but it would be lovely if I see more subscriptions. The views, like I say, are great. YouTube tells me that I retain a lot of viewers, and YouTube tells me that a lot of my viewers listen or watch until the end, which is good for YouTube because people have very low attention span. And also, before I start reading, I want to thank you. A lot of you responded quite positively and quite encouragingly to the mother wound teaching. I will be doing teachings on Sundays. I was going to be teaching about how to write your own journal and to write your own book. I think maybe I was too ambitious. Let's do that a little later. Let me get used to this, and then I'll do those teachings. And who knows, I might just do those teachings just as a course instead of, snippets here. Right? So I will be doing more on the mother wound, the inner child, and some of the teachings that I do on Patreon. But for deeper teachings, if you really, really want to know me as a teacher or know me as a coach, I encourage you to please subscribe to Patreon. The details are right here on the video. Just go to Patreon, join as a member, or join for free. But I would appreciate if you join straight up as a member, because there is a ton of content that will help you, especially if you already like this. If you like this, you are absolutely going to love my teachings on Patreon. Okay, cool. Now, let us read. Glasses. Okay, so I am reading chapter 4, and I am starting in the middle for reasons that I have told you. So it starts by this. My grandfather, Papa Joe, so this is my paternal, because my father we called him Daddy. Everybody called him Daddy, even neighbors, even people on the street, Daddy, Nelly, Daddy. Excuse me. My grandfather, Papa Joe, used to sit under the peach tree in Pinville, drinking Gordon's gin or mainstay vodka. Okay, so on school holidays, the March, June, and maybe even September, we would always, without fail, go to Soweto, go Pinville. And so this is where he was. He would sit under the tree drinking Gordon's gin or mainstay vodka. I don't think it was daily, but that's what I remember. Memory is memory, right? And there were lots and lots of nips, the bottles are nippy and sometimes straight that would be there. And sometimes we'd pick those bottles up and go sell them for like 2 rand or something. I mean, those were the days, hey? But there were many. He would drink it straight from the bottle, no ice, no tonic water, no orange juice, sipping on gin and juice. There was nothing like that. If he was not sitting under the tree, he would be in his bedroom staring at a blank wall. He did not tolerate noise, particularly children making noise by laughing and crying. That was his noise. We were laughing or crying or just we're rowdy. I mean, Pinville, there were many, many of us. Some of you may or may not know that my cousin, Sonia Booth, is my cousin, and we grew up together. Literally every school holidays, like I say, we'd go to Pinville. If I say we're going to Pinville, I mean at Sonia's house. Or they would come to Alexandra, Sonia and Vuyo, my other cousin, Sonia's brother. The others were too small. I literally grew up with Sonia and Vuyo. And Vuyo eventually also lived at Alex Kogetsu with us. So very interesting dynamics. He did not tolerate noise, particularly children making noise by laughing or crying. He would lose his temper and shout a booming roar. The children were told to be quiet whenever he entered the house. He brought with him an aura of fear every time he walked past us. He had his own presence, but it was now that I know what I know and I'm older and I do the kind of work that I do. He carried a lot of anger, and it showed in his energy, it showed in his stature, and yeah, he terrified us, all of us. Whenever he would pass by, there would be an instant cold silence when he walked past us. He made me very, very nervous. He would roar from his bedroom whenever we made the noise. Shut up! I said shut up! And yes, in English. Intriguingly, he used to speak English almost predominantly. When the noise did not subside, he would come out of his bedroom. I will chase you out of my house. Shut up. Lantlodi. You're too loud for me. Lantlodia is Landrasetsa. You're too loud. There would be dead silence for a short while, and then the whole scene would play out again. I mean, we were children. Think about it. Someone gets out, screams, La Rasa, hey, shut up. And then we are quiet. And then within 5 minutes, it starts all over again. We were children. We laughed, we played, we cried, regardless of his temper. There was no guessing that he was a troubled soul. But listening to the stories from my aunts and my father, he was a highly intelligent man and a mysterious character. Papa Joe died in 1992, and I really, really wish I had known him. I had known him better. I remember his funeral. I was 16, and I was pregnant with Solo, as you know, and I was asked to read. I think I read an obituary. I read something, either an obituary or a gratis something. I think I read an obituary with my tiny little bump there. I remember that day. I really remember that. My father never interacted with Papa Joe during our visits to Pinville. We were told that my grandfather used to beat my grandmother and that my father often had to protect his mother. So there was always this weirdness around the two of them, like most Black families that have that father beating mother dynamic. I mean, it's sort of the same with my brothers and my father, although towards the end, their relationship had really, really mended because Daddy did stop beating Ma. He did much later than we would have loved. But the point is, he did stop. Okay. My maternal grandparents were the complete opposite. Mkulu, my mother's father. Mkulu was the most loving man I knew. Mkulu, Bagbero. He was indeed the most loving man I knew. He was very close to my mother. In fact, he was close to all his children. He lived in Johannesburg while his wife, my grandmother, Gogo, lived in Swaziland. Every year in the December holidays, we would all travel to Swaziland. These memories, these make me very emotional. So in the best way, not sad. It's very nostalgic, and I just remember them and I miss them. And those are the days. Every year in December, my mother, my siblings, my grandfather, and me would all travel overnight on the train. The long journey and sleeping on the train was something to look forward to. I don't know if you guys did that, remember back in the days, we'd all go to Park Station, Kopalki, and get onto this train. We used to call it Lala class, where you would sleep in the train. I mean, it felt like such a trip. I mean, the train ride itself was already part of the whole thing. So it wasn't about arriving to Swaziland. It was just about the whole journey, eating chicken and dombolo in the train and waking up and just the kuchu, kuchu, kuchu. Oh my word. Oh my God. We'd travel overnight on the train. The long journey and sleeping on the train was something to look forward to. I enjoyed the mpaho, basco, patkos, which would usually be a full roast chicken, dumplings, scones, lots of fruits, chips, and many other treats like biscuits and chocolates. My mom, natural feeder of note. So there was always a lot of food and drinks and Coca-Cola, and it was just a lot. There were new clothes for Christmas. The energy and the atmosphere around the trip were electric. I could not sit still, nor could I sleep the day before the trip. Mkulu and Gogo were a remarkable sight. They would sit under the tree for hours talking, reading the Bible, and singing hymns together. Mkulu loved to sing. Just forgive me. Mkulu loved to sing. We would gather around them as they told us Bible stories. There was always warmth and laughter and lots of food in Swaziland. Mkulu did not see children as children. He saw us as little people. One thing about Mkulu is that he used to talk to children like he's talking to an adult. He used to make eye contact. He used to talk. He used to ask questions, which was the polar opposite with the other one. No judgment, just, facts and observations. Nkulu was involved in the household activities. Every morning, he would make a big pot of tea for everybody. He would wake up early in the morning and to slaughter and clean and cook 2 or 3 chickens when we are in Swaziland. Because I mean, every time it was a Swaziland trip, you know that you're going to be in a house of 14 to 16 people. So slaughtering 2 to 3 chickens was not like unusual. Then he would lay the table and call all the children and grandchildren to just feast. Whenever there were dishes, Mkulu did not mind washing them. They say women marry their fathers and men marry their mothers. I have always wondered how my mother chose my father. My father got it right, though. He certainly did marry his mother. And I'm going to talk on that because that's a very important line there. I'm going to talk on that when I do the teachings. You know how people would say things like, um, when you had a great father, you are most likely going to get a great husband or a great man because you're going to marry someone who's similar to that and vice versa. Yeah, there's a lot of truth in that, but there's also a twist somehow. And I don't want to get into it here. I'll get into it as a separate subject because that it's not always the case. You find women with great fathers, but they would date and marry almost the opposite of their dad. There's a reason why. It has a lot to do with mother wounding. We will talk about that when we talk about it. I just thought I should put it there because it came up here. Whenever there were dishes in cool, no, I've read that. I have often wondered how my mother chose my father. My father did get it right, though. He certainly married his mother. In my mother. So my maternal grandmother, Omageli Naomi, I'm named after her. My middle name is Naomi, so I'm named after her, was the most loving woman you can ever find. I didn't know her long. I didn't know her well. She passed away 1986. I was 10 years old. I remember her, but I don't know her well. But I know stories and stories of how incredibly generous and incredibly beautiful she was. So amazing that apparently when she died, the news of her death broke my mother the most. Apparently, my mom was the one who cried more than everybody for losing her mother-in-law because their mother-in-law was, I don't know why I'm so emotional. Yeah, you see why these things are important, reading and reflecting, because the fact that I'm emotional probably means that I am releasing quite a bit and Obviously, I'm going to have myself a good cry after here. I'm not going to do it here on YouTube, but there's clearly something that needs to be released. Okay, so perhaps let me leave it here. Perhaps let me leave it here for today, and I will continue because I see the next line is really about my grandmother, my grandmothers, and my mother. So the next video will be about my mother, my paternal grandmother, and my maternal grandmother. And we will then conclude it there. But just to reflect, I mean, it's fascinating how I had two almost polar opposite um, grandfathers, and I had never, I wish I could have seen them interact. I have never seen them interact in my whole life. Not that they didn't, but I never had the chance to see that. I don't ever remember Mkulu or Gogo even going to Pinville or the other way around, you know, Papa Joe. I don't know if Papa Joe has ever visited us in Alexandra. But I just know that we used to be the ones that go to Soweto. And you know, Papa Joe would sit under that peach tree. And there was something that was also just so incredible that he used to do. For as long as he's sitting under the peach tree and those peaches are ripe, no one's going to touch the trees. No one's going to touch the peaches unless he says so. And even if you go and you pick a peach or two, he would measure how much you pick. You can't just pick however many you want because you know he would stand guard there and just watch that. It's just it's really interesting, you know, the whole thing of our fathers and our grandfathers. You know, I wonder how I wonder if you have a grandparent, a grandfather still alive, how he was, how his character influenced your father or your mother, and to also another extent maybe influenced you, especially if you're a guy listening to this, because the male parents, the male grandparent impacts more on the males, the same way that the females impact more on the female. The same sex parent has far more influence and far more say in who you become and in what you become. So yeah, I guess this is it today. Did not expect to get so emotional. I will, like I said, I will go and get myself a good cry and release whatever needs to be released. And this is my story. I cannot wait to hear yours.